If you're sitting in the C-suite overseeing a healthcare revenue cycle, you already know the absolute headache of back-end claim denials, right? You submit a perfectly clean claim, and then boom, 45 days later, it bounces back, tying up your staff and strangling your cash flow. Well, in today's explainer, we're going to dive into exactly why your revenue cycle is literally bleeding on the front end, and more importantly, how we can permanently stop it. Check out this stat from the MGMA, and honestly, it's a little jarring. Nearly 40% of all claim denials originate entirely from front-end intake errors. Think about that for a second. That means almost half of your denial management team's entire workload is being generated before the patient even sits down in the exam room. Wild, right? And the financial pain point here, it is severe. It costs anywhere from $25 to $118 just to rework a single denied claim. When you start multiplying that by dozens or even hundreds of claims a week, you're looking at a massive compounding drain on your margins. The math just doesn't support a reactive, back-end strategy anymore. We absolutely have to fix the front end. So let's look at the first major leak, registration errors. We're talking about a transposed digit or maybe an outdated group number because the patient just got married. Now, these seem like super trivial data entry mistakes at the front desk, but 45 days later, they morph into massive, costly denials. The fix? You've got to shift from optional data entry to mandatory, real-time eligibility tools. You need to validate that patient information at the exact point of scheduling, no exceptions. Which leads us right into gap number 2, stale eligibility. Look, if your team is only verifying insurance once when the appointment is made, you are practically guaranteeing that you'll be billing on stale data. Coverage and payer rules change all the time, right? Job transitions, shifting policies, you name it. The crucial fix here is implementing a rigorous 3-point verification workflow. Check at scheduling, check 48 hours prior, and then verify one last time at check-in. Now, fixing this requires a fundamental shift in executive mindset. Here's the truth. The fix is not to improve your appeals process. The fix is to stop producing the denials in the first place. Your highly skilled, expensive billing team shouldn't be spending their days endlessly chasing payers for errors that were 100% preventable at the front desk. This proactive mindset is especially vital for gap number 3, prior authorization workflow cracks. We all know authorizations are a massive headache, but the failure usually isn't a knowledge gap. It's a workflow tracking gap. An auth expires or the wrong CPT code gets logged. The immediate tactical solution is ditching those fragmented manual notes. You need centralized tracking logs with strict assigned ownership for every single open authorization. Moving on to gap 4, clinical documentation misalignment. Payers are using some incredibly sophisticated tools to cross-reference your build codes against the actual clinical notes. And if a physician documents for clinical reality but misses the payer's structural requirements, yep, you get downcoded. You fix this by building a direct feedback loop. Your providers actually need to see the denial impact of their documentation in real time. And then we have gap 5, which I like to call the silent killer, credentialing lapses. A provider's enrollment quietly expires, and suddenly, you're facing massive retroactive financial devastation for every single claim submitted during that gap. Manual calendar reminders simply aren't going to cut it at scale. You need automated 90, 60, and 30-day alerts to catch these lapses way before a single claim ever goes out the door. So you might be wondering, how do we systematically identify which of these gaps is hurting our facility the most? Well, it requires a strategic paradigm shift that we call the denial fingerprint. Instead of just looking at standard payer rejection codes and working them blindly, you've got to map every single back-end denial directly to the specific front-end workflow stage where that error was born. Let's break that down. By tracking a specific remark code, like, say, a CO 197 for a missing authorization back to gap 3, or a CO 16 for missing info back to gap 1, you completely stop guessing. You strategically trace the root cause, because fixing the actual workflow gap eliminates the denials right at the source, rather than just endlessly treating the symptoms on the back end. Of course, building this kind of preventative infrastructure takes some serious strategic expertise. And that is exactly where ProMantra steps in as the RCM partner your organization needs. We implement this denial fingerprint strategy for you by conducting structured, root cause audits, building custom workflow fixes for your front end, and handling your parallel denial recovery. This means your cash flow improves immediately while we permanently seal up those leaks. So, are you ready to find out which of these 5 gaps is driving the most denials in your practice? It is time to stop the denials before they even start. Take a look at the contact details right here and reach out to ProMantra for a free demo. Let's permanently close the gaps in your revenue cycle today.